In almost any fantasy universe that exists, beards are one of the most easily identifiable characteristics of dwarfs. Depending on the setting, the dwarfs will have long lush beards that almost reach to their toes, or they will have relatively short beards, like for example the dwarf shaman in Goblin Slayer, but you won't see too many fantasy worlds where dwarfs without beards are even a thing. The only example I can think of off the top of my head are dwarfs that live in Arkanretia, the city of hot springs from Konosuba, and at least one of them had a beard to pay, since he worked with food and having a beard, especially a long one, would be quite unhygienic. But all of this leads us to the question of why dwarfs would even grow or have beards in the first place, aside from just aesthetics. And the first idea I have is that beards are natural armor for dwarfs. Sounds a bit strange at first, but if you take into account of just how thick and how bushy a dwarven beard is often depicted to be, and how long they are, and what they cover, it makes perfect sense. See, just like Gambason armor is basically just a bunch of layered cloths, but still strong enough to absorb most blunt weapons damage and even prevent swords from cutting through it. Think of a dwarven beard in those kind of terms, and it makes sense to wear a beard long enough to touch the dwarf's kneecap, because of what is hidden under it, and therefore protected by it. When a dwarf fights, he will face the enemy head on. In other words, his front will be exposed to the opponent. And what does the dwarf beard cover up? Well, actually everything important. Not only does the beard of a dwarf protect the lower spear of a dwarf from blunt or cutting damage, but it also shields the belly, covers up the chest, where a dwarf's heart and lungs are, and reduces the impact of any blunt attack quite significantly. But perhaps the biggest advantage of a dwarven beard that looks like this is the fact that the dwarf in question will have his neck obscured entirely. The dwarf bodies are always depicted as quite robust, tough and sturdy, but the neck of a dwarf is still vulnerable, perhaps even as vulnerable as that of a normal human being. So simply not knowing where under all of this hair the neck precisely is hidden is a major advantage for any single dwarf. And aside from this, the dwarven beard could also fulfill two other major functions. Since dwarfs are quite hairy, they are really well insulated against the cold of the mountains, and the beard could basically act as a winter coat, or perhaps as a makeshift mattress to keep the cold of the underground away from the body. So most dwarfs would then sleep on their belly. But, and this is also a possibility, and I have to thank this wonderful YouTube comment under my last dwarf related video for it, the beard of a dwarf could also have a very high amount of metal in it, and be used to conduct heat and radiate it away from the body in warmer climates, or when the dwarf has to fight or work for extended periods of time. And since the beard covers the face and the neck, where a sizable amount of blood makes contact with the body surface, it would make an astonishing amount of sense to see the dwarven beard as some sort of metal reinforced radiator for body heat. And of course, if the dwarf beard is that metallic, it also makes sense why the dwarves need to be strong and bulky in order to carry their mighty beards around with them. And this would also make them way better to deflect or at least absorb any blows from enemies, because you would basically try to cut steel whenever you are attacking a dwarf and try to cut through his beard. And with that said, I will end this video. Thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to all of my Patreons for supporting this channel. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon under my next video.